Good morning and welcome to the Forex Daily Update, brought to you by Pepperstone on Friday the 27th of July 2018. I'm Darren Sinden, and you can follow me throughout the day on Twitter by using @ds_Pepperstone. Now let's take a look at the overnight changes and price moves to be aware of, and I just want to contrast the fortunes of the dollar in the last 24 hours. It's lost ground to both the Chinese yuan and the Korean won, but fought back very strongly against the Brazilian real. Dollar index for its part largely unchanged, 94.71, a little bit better than we saw it earlier in the week, but no real move on a daily basis, and of course still well below that 95 level. Speaking of key levels, interesting to note that Bitcoin has slipped back below that $8,000 a coin, trading at $7,932 shortly before we recorded the video. Right then, what's on the calendar? Events that may move the markets today. A reasonably busy calendar. We've already had Australian Producer Price Index data for Q2 earlier this morning, and we'll look at that in a bit more detail momentarily. We'll shortly have gross domestic product data out of France for the second quarter of 2018. That'll be followed by import price index data for June out of Germany, and then at 6:45 we'll have consumer spending month-on-month data for June as well, and 15 minutes later retail sales out of Spain at 7 AM GMT. Then at 8 o'clock producer price index data for June out of Italy, and then we have a 4-hour and 20-minute break until 12:20 when we have the Fed's Jimmy Bullard speaking in the US. At 12:30, the pick of the day's data on the calendar. That's the release of gross domestic product data out of the US for Q2, and again we'll look at that in a bit more detail momentarily. We'll also have personal consumption expenditure and core personal consumption expenditure at the same time out of the USA, and that'll be followed at 1400 by the Michigan sentiment data, consumer sentiment data I should say, for July. 1700 sees the release of the influential Baker Hughes US oil rig count, a look at how many drilling rigs are active in the US over the last week, or have been active over the last week. And then at 19:30, if you're still in the market today, it's the weekly release of the commitment of traders reports from the US CFTC. Okay then, breaking news and comment that's caught my eye overnight. Firstly, Facebook sell-off weighs on US tech indices, with the Nasdaq indices down by around 1%. Meanwhile, President Trump's economic advisor says the Q2 GDP release today will be big, but then denied that he had specific information on the numbers due out later today. And that comment in the FT. That Australian PPI data missing. Forecast quarter on quarter rising by just 0.3% versus the 0.4% predicted. Of course, producer price index data is a measure of factory gate inflation and therefore a measure of economic growth, and the higher the number, the better the chances of an Australian rate rise. But another miss, another dent to the balls of the Aussie dollar, I would suggest. And in a sign of improving political relations between the West and North Korea, the remains of US servicemen who were killed in the Korean War are repatriated from North Korea, says the White House. So hopefully that's a positive sign. Okay then, food for thought, something to take away with you into the trading day and beyond. Well, why not think about this? As we've heard, US Q2 GDP data is due out later today. The market's consensus forecasts are for growth of 2.3% quarter on quarter, and for annualised growth of 4.3%. But yesterday's durable goods data saw the GDP Now model, as managed by the Atlanta Fed, reduce its forecast to 3.8% for the annualised figure, and therefore below the average consensus. Why is that interesting? Well, the GDP Nowcast is a model that tries to track GDP in real time through a number of other indicators and their impact, or more likely impact, on the GDP figure. I can get my teeth in, and as you can see, the green line, which is the GDP Now figure, has led the consensus forecast, this blue band here, for much of the year, and certainly up until mid-June. Dipped off and then rallied again sharply in early July, but now has dipped down again. So are we in for perhaps a disappointing number, despite Mr. Kudlow's talk of a big release? Well, we'll have to see at 12:30 today, but certainly that's something to watch closely. Right, please take a moment to read the risk warning. Trading CFDs and foreign exchange on margin can be a risky business. If you're in any doubt about the suitability of the products for you or the use of leverage in trading, then you should contact your Pepperstone account representative. Thank you for your time. Have a good weekend.